بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد يقول الله عز وجل يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That you who believe fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you so that you may attain taqwa. What stands out for you guys in this ayah?
You who believe.
Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the believers. Good. What else?
For me, it's like it was prescribed to others before us.
Okay, so what benefit can I take if I know that it was prescribed to those before us as well?
But it's a continuation of the same.
Okay, you can say
dawah.
it's a continuation of the same dawah. That's good. How comfortable do I feel traveling down a path that I know other people have been down? All right, you become a lot more comfortable. Versus if it's like, oh no, you're the first one to do this. Right. So if I'm the first one to do it, how do I feel?
Anxious?
Right. It's like a little bit more timid, a little bit more anxious. Right. It becomes a little bit more challenging. And then, not just that, if people went down that path, that means that actually going down it is achievable. It's like a doable thing. So if I know that people have gone down this path, it's like, okay, it's something that's established, it's something that's done, and it's something that is very doable. He Azza wa Jal also mentions that so that you may attain taqwa. So he's talking about the believers, right? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. And this is the characteristic that he's given to them. Like, okay, these individuals, they believe they are people of Iman. Shouldn't people of Iman have taqwa?
Yeah.
They should. Okay, so what is fasting going to do for this person's taqwa? If they already have it.
It's rekindle it.
Okay, so this gives us an idea of the relationship between Iman and Taqwa. It also gives us an idea that Iman and Taqwa are something that, right, they go up and down. And if it's something that I want to rekindle, if it's something that I want to attain, it's something I want to work for, then one easy way of doing that is what? Fasting. Right? It's through fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, in this ayah, He says that the vehicle to taqwa, the thing that will take me to taqwa is my fasting. So I want to spend a little bit of time on what it is. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala single out fasting from the deeds, right? So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about prayer, He says that salat tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, right? Salah, it prevents you from falling into evil and laudacious deeds and outrageous deeds. Okay, so that's something that protects me. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about zakat, He talks لِتُطَحِّرُهُمْ, right? Like to purify them. And then we have this idea of taqwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala links it to fasting. And this is a very unique link that He Azza wa Jal brings for us. So all of these discussions on how to fast, that will be after Isha, inshallah with Ustad Uthman. But why do we fast? There are a number of reasons. In Ramadan, why do we fast?
Why do we fast?
Yes. We have to, right? Right? It's an obligation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated it, and that's why we fast. Are there other days that we can fast?
Yes.
Right? Like what?
Monday, Thursday.
Mondays and Thursdays, the white days, right? Which is where the moon is full. What other days?
The 10 days the
Ah, Al-Hijrah. Ahsanti, good. Except Eid, of course.
Of course. And then the 15th of Shaban.
Okay. Some scholars say the 15th of Shaban. What other days?
The 6th of Shawwal.
Okay, the 6 days of Shawwal.
6 days.
Good. Except Eid, of course.
Yeah. I think,
Muharram.
the Ashura.
Ashura, right? Right, Ashura and Tasu'ah, right? Fasting that day. But all of those fasts are
Our sunnah.
sunnah, right? Those are all recommended fasts. The only obligatory fasts we have in Islam are in the month of Ramadan. There's one other situation where it's an obligation. Do you guys know? Oh, I would say there's multiple, but khair.
When you're not married and you have to overcome your
So
desires.
even over there, it's a sunnah. But I will say that when it comes to other reasons for fasting, if I do a nadar, right? For example, ya Allah, if you give me 100 on this exam, I'll fast for 3 days, right? So this is something. Why is it an obligation? Because I obligated it upon myself. The other space where it would become an obligation is like if I have to pay a kafara or expiation for something. These are all different situations. Like for example, a man who's intimate with his wife during the day of Ramadan, what is the expiation? He has to fast for 2 months continuously. So those are more penalties, right? Versus, those are more penalties than they are obligations in and of themselves, right? So religious obligations in the sense that those that apply to everyone are the month of Ramadan, and the other obligations are in terms of penalties for some type of violation. Shaban also, I don't think we mentioned that one. And that's for in preparation of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ used to fast a lot of Shaban. There are a number of hadith, right? The first of them, if Ramadan comes, the door of paradise are open, the doors of hellfire are closed, and the devils are chained. Many of us know this hadith. What is the Prophet ﷺ, what is he encouraging us with here? And what do these each individual components mean? So when he says the doors of paradise are open,
That means increase your du'as.
all right, so this is an opportunity for me to increase in good deeds. It's an opportunity for me to increase in dua. The one who passes away in the month of Ramadan,
Is a blessing.
right? It's a blessed person that, the chances for him to enter paradise increase. The gates of the hellfire are closed, right? And it's very similar, right? In line with this idea of the gates of paradise being open. In the last portion where it says the devils are chained, what does that mean?
Less temptation during Ramadan.
Okay, so here the Prophet ﷺ, when he says the devils are chained, does he mean that they're literally chained by Allah, or is it something else? Is this a metaphor for something?
It's the listening less to.
Okay, why is that? So when the month of Ramadan enters, or when the month of Ramadan starts, why is it easier for us to do good deeds?
It's a habit, it's really a habit, plus the people around us.
Okay, right. So there's a social pressure that's definitely there. I think that's an important part of it. It's something that becomes a habit. But there are people who don't fast the entire year, but only fast when Ramadan comes, right? So,
Guilt?
I'm sorry.
Guilt?
Guilt? I hope not. You feel guilty for the rest of the year. Allah Mustaan. But I will say that in the month of Ramadan, there is a lot of social pressure. There's definitely, I agree with that. When everybody's fasting, how much easier does it become to fast? Right, it becomes a lot easier. And when it's time for iftar, like everybody getting together, there's a nice environment that's created in that time. People are very focused, in the month of Ramadan. And la shak, without doubt, it is a blessed month, and those blessings become very apparent very quickly, like the night of Ramadan, right? So somebody who maybe doesn't regularly come to the masjid, the first night of Taraweeh, like the first week, if you guys get an opportunity to come and pray at Al-Hijrah, it is like packed. It's like, people miss the masjid, they miss the company, they miss the atmosphere. And I think those are all reasonable reasons to come back to the masjid and to be involved again. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I don't think anybody should feel bad, like, oh, I've been like this or I've been like that. No, khalas. Allah gave you this opportunity. Take advantage of it. Yes, go ahead.
On the previous slide, you started with the doors of paradise are open, but
Yeah.
if Ramadan comes, it feels like two different. If Ramadan comes,
Mm-hmm.
you're blessed that you're alive
Yeah,
to experience Ramadan.
absolutely. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reach Ramadan. Ameen.
Amen. And then it means the world is still continuing, so La ilaha illallah
Mhm.
is still on the tongues of the humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Every action that the son of Adam takes is for himself, except for fasting. That I have taken for myself, and I will give a specific reward concerning it. Fasting is a restrainer, so that if one of you fasts a day, he should not indulge in indecent speech or unnecessarily raise his voice, even if he is cursed or fought. He should say, I am fasting, I swear by the one who holds Muhammad's life, the smell from the mouth of the fragrant person, of the fasting person, is more beloved to Allah on the Day of Judgment than the perfumed oil misk. The one who fasts will have 2 moments of happiness: when he breaks his fast and when he meets his Lord with his fast. So let's look at the first part of this hadith, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, "As-sawmun li wa ana ajzi bi." Like, the fasting is for me and I give the specific reward for that. What does that mean? So are there certain deeds where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about, I'm going to multiply these 10 times, I'm going to multiply this 700 times. The prayer, if I pray in congregation, 22, 25, 27 times, right? What about fasting? Subhanallah. Right? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how much the fasting will be multiplied. Like, we have multiplication for other deeds that Allah mentions, but the deed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't talk about, how much and the depth of reward for that is the fasting. He goes on to say that that fasting is a restrainer. Yani as-sawmu junnah, like it protects you. It protects you from what?
From yourself?
It can protect you from yourself. But over here in this context, what is it protecting me from? It could protect me from the shaitan, for sure. Right? So if we talk about the nafs, if we talk about the shaitan, we talk about ourselves, we talk about the shaitan, and it protects us from sin, right? You know, and why is that? What happens in fasting? Or like, what makes fasting unique versus other deeds?
The fasting is not just restraining yourself from the food and the water.
Sure.
It has other aspects to it.
Sure.
And if you want to do it right and have it accepted, hope that it is respected,
Yeah.
accepted, then you're not being angry, you're not talking behind people, you're not putting anybody down.
Sure.
So that you are almost like in a state of an angelic state.
Okay. Like you're in a state of dhikr constantly, right? Okay. So the difference between, one of the differences between prayer and fasting is that I know exactly, like the prayer beginning and ending, how long does that take? Right? It's very short, depending on who's leading the prayer. But like it's not that long versus fasting. Right? It goes throughout the entire day, meaning that I will experience my normal day while I'm in the state of dhikr, right? While I'm in the state of remembrance. And over here, even this, like when people argue with me or people chastise me or people say things, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to respond with saying, I'm fasting. Why? Because I'm trying to flex my fast? It's a reminder for me, right? It's not a reminder for that person. Like, does that person, if a person is yelling at me or fighting with me, is he going to care whether I'm fasting or not? Right? Like, no, don't fight me, I'm fasting. It's like, it's a self-reminder, right? It's a reminder for ourselves that, hey, listen, I'm in a state of fasting. I need to hold myself to a higher standard. And that's something that's really important. And then the hadith, it goes on to say that, I swear by the one who holds Muhammad's life, the smell from the mouth of a fasting person is more beloved to Allah on the Day of Judgment than the perfumed oil misk. So a person who is fasting, as he gets toward the end of the day, how does his breath smell?
Well, the mouth dries out, and so
It smells bad, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's not a pleasant smell. So over here, did the Prophet ﷺ mean that Allah actually likes that smell? طيب كيف نفهم الحديث؟
let other people يبينوا الحديث المسلم بهذا الريحة عند الله معناها مهما تكون هذه الريحة عند الله كلمة.
فيقول عز بن عبد السلام عندما شرح الحديث بأن ليس الريحة لذاته بس السبب الريحة.
Wow.
Right, so it's not about the smell itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy that the cause of the smell is what? Is the fasting. So essentially, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy with? He's happy with the fast, right? He's happy that this individual is fasting. And sometimes this is a reminder for us, right? Like where we're shy of our breath, like when we're fasting. But it's a reminder for us too, like, subhanAllah, even though I have little tolerance for this, well, guess who has a great tolerance for it? Right? My Lord. Because I'm doing this for who? Ideally, yeah, I'm doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the end of the hadith, the one who fasts, he'll have 2 moments of happiness. This is beautiful. Right? When he breaks his fast and when he meets his Lord. Because after not eating for the entire day and food, how does food taste after fasting?
It's exaggerated.
Right? Right? It tastes that much better. SubhanAllah, one of the things I didn't notice in different parts of the Muslim world, like during Ramadan, people like weird things in Ramadan. Right? There's like yashtahun, you know what I mean? Like there are different types of food that you only find them making in Ramadan. Like you don't find them making outside of Ramadan. And there are some, so when I was in Mecca, there are 2 dishes that were like really famous and I never saw them outside of Ramadan. One was subia, which is, it's like instead of grape juice, it's raisin juice, and they would always have the white one and the pink one. Wallahi, I never saw it outside of Ramadan. Like it was like the day Ramadan started, you'd have like these vendors standing there with like these bags of subia. I thought it was so funny because it's not even that good, but it's just a really big cultural thing, and people are like, no man, when Ramadan comes, I can't do this. Like in our culture, it's like a lot of fried food. So like you have like pakoras and samosas. Like this is like really big. It's really important to have these things when you break your fast. So some cultures like soups are really big, right? Like having soups, to break your fast with. But again, the things that you might not normally see being cooked, in Ramadan, you have that unique desire for these particular foods, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think as long as it's halal, it's important for us to enjoy different things. And even the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? He said, "What is this? Is the believer he's talking about? How does the believer feel when the food is presented? Delighted, happy, ecstatic." And not just that, this is a reminder for us. Like just like we're coming to this food, and we're in a state of happiness. What is the second time that we're going to see that?
When we meet Allah.
When we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why will we be happy? Because there's going to be good food there too? No?
Yes,
there will be,
inshallah.
inshallah.
But it's because we've completed the requirements, and He'll be happy with us, inshallah.
Okay.
So we're going to be happy seeing Him.
So the end of the hadith is, it connects back to the beginning.
With His facts.
Right? That I'm going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of us are. And all of a sudden, I'm going to be like, where did all these deeds come from?
Yeah.
How will we feel in that moment? Like, ecstatic.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I thought I only did like, this, or I only thought I contributed this little bit, or these few actions. And I look and I get to see, inshallah, these mountain of deeds. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He decided that this is how much that one fast or those 2 fasts were worth. So, yeah, I think it's a really beautiful, encouraging hadith. And the hadith around Ramadan, man, they're so happy, right? Like they're so happy, they're so motivational. Like it's really nice. A very similar hadith: every action of the son of Adam is multiplied. A good deed is multiplied anywhere from 10 to 700 times. Allah, the Most Noble, says, except fasting. Illa sawm wa ana ajzi bih, right? Because it is for me, and I will specify the reward for it. He left his lust and his food because of me. Very similar to the previous hadith. The next one, in the paradise there is a door said to be named Ar-Rayyan. Those who fasted will enter it, and no other shall enter it with them. It will proclaim, where are those who used to fast, and they will then enter it. When the last of them passes through it, will close, never to open for another. Similar hadith, in paradise there is a door called Rayyan. It will call for those that used to fast, so they will enter it, never experiencing thirst again. Yes?
What do you think that is? Like, how many times is that, do you think, like, you can get through that door? Is that just like the one being?
So basically, these are like the gates of paradise.
Yeah.
In the moment I pass through that gate, where am I? In Jannah. And after that, the door is going to close, meaning that nobody else will receive the honor that those individuals received.
No, if you want to be one of those,
Oh.
what do you think that looks
Oh,
like? How many times?
Oh, how many times? Well, it's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know.
Just the white days and
So at the end of the day, I think it's very important for an individual to fast if it's something that empowers them, right? Because the problem sometimes we have with certain deeds is that when we start taking them as burdensome, it doesn't have that effect on the iman that we need it to have. So if I was somebody, for example, who fasted every Monday and Thursday, and I fasted the white days, and then all of a sudden I started feeling exhausted, I don't feel the fulfillment is there, it's time for me to change my focus into different things. One of the beautiful things in Islam is, we had talked about the 4 pillars of Islam, right? Like when we talk about prayer, fasting, zakat, and hajj. Yes, they're obligations, but you know the other benefit of them? They're all very different. And one of the reasons Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made these deeds so different, it's like, you know how you force a child to try different food? Why do we force children to try different foods?
Want to develop a sense of appreciation for the
Appreciation is a very important part of it. What else?
nutrition.
Taste, what else?
Having pleasure to change from food to food.
Exposure,
Exposure.
right? That's really, really important. That the reason we're like, no, just try it. Why? Because if they try it, they might enjoy it, right? They might like it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He do? He forces us to try different types of deeds. And when He forces us to try different types of deeds, what I can do is like, at least I have a little bit of an idea of, okay, if I want to go more into this, if I want to start praying more sunan, I want to do more nawafil, okay, I know what that looks like. If I want to make more umrahs, blah, 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 I know what that looks like. Right? If I want to get involved in giving charity, but okay, you know what I mean? Like I would say in terms of categories, these are probably the general categories of the types of worship that we have. Now I can engage in different and meaningful ways. Like because even salah, under salah, you'll have qira'at al-Quran, right? Like reading of the Quran, you'll have adhkar, you'll have dua, right? So like you have those types of deeds that are definitely there. And now that I have a taste of these different deeds, I can start switching from one to another. Be like, okay, you know what? Man, I've been doing this for like a year. Alhamdulillah, I enjoyed, you know, maybe that past year or those past 2 years that I was doing it. Let me try something else now. Or some people, mashallah, they're consistent throughout their lives, right? You know, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us dawam and, you know, give us the ability to be steadfast and muwadaba so that we are continuous on these deeds. I mean, but it's important to keep in mind that we need to keep looking for fulfillment, right? Not what I'm feeling, but what is bringing me fulfillment, and how do I know that the deeds are working? So if I'm locked in on a particular deed, right, or I want to focus on one particular type of worship or action, how do I know it's working? How do I know I'm receiving that fulfillment? Because remember, it's not always based off how I feel. Where should I see the results?
Yes.
Okay. Not always. Huh? In people, like what? What do you can you expand on that a little?
You see the results in the community that you're doing your efforts in?
Like what kind of results? I promise I'm not being difficult. I'm just.
Well, for example, when you are attending a masala or a masjid and you make sunnah, you know, you may see brothers that don't necessarily stay the next sunnah. They're affected, they make more sunnah. When you are investing and speaking to volunteering,
Uh-huh.
and then you volunteer, you may see more joining the volunteering efforts.
So
You see the residual effects.
there can be an encouragement aspect to it. I don't know how often that happens. Is there a clearer gauge? Because we might not always see that, right? We might not always see the other people encouraging to do the same thing.
I think it's the inner peace.
Okay, so a little bit of this goes to like the feeling, which is fine, right? You know what I mean? I think that's okay. But is there a clear outcome or a clear response that I would see in this? That I know that, okay, you know what? I'm doing well. Let me continue on this path.
I see it like in some people forward, doors open for them much faster.
Okay.
Like it just
Sure.
looks like they're blessed.
Okay.
They do so much.
So sometimes that's from our observation as a third party, right? And we think that, oh, look at all the doors Allah is opening for them. And it's not always the case. And the reason that I'm hesitant with that is because my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not like a zero-sum thing where, okay, if I pray, He's going to give me a nice house, right? Or if I fast, He's going to give me a nice job, right? So it's not going to work like that. So what are some other things I can look for? Yeah. I'm sorry? You stop sinning. Ahsant, good. Like, well, I hope we all stop sinning. I mean, but it's a little tough. But I will say that maybe my investment and the recurrence of sin is decreasing. I think that's a great sign. What else?
Behavior.
I'm sorry?
The behavior.
Okay.
We
Not
can see that.
okay.
The anxiety.
Mumtaz. No, that's excellent. What kind of behavior?
Not being more angry, more good relation.
No, mashallah. Jaziti khair. That it'll express in my personality. Right? So if I'm praying and I'm fasting and I'm making hajj, I'm doing adhkar, right? You know what I mean? Like if I'm doing all of these things, all of this should reflect in my personality. It should reflect on how I'm engaging with other people. So if someone wants to know, okay, you know, is my prayer good? Number one, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowing me to continue that prayer? Right? That's a very important sign. All right, how is this affecting my sins? Okay, alhamdulillah, it's having a positive effect and it's causing them to decrease. And Allah has bettered my relationships. Better relationships sometimes can look like I draw harder boundaries with people, right? Like I might not interact with certain people. I might bring some people closer. I might push certain people away. All of that is healthy. Right? I don't think there's an issue with that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now giving me control over my heart. Right? Which is what we seek. Like we want to purify this muscle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And that can only be through doing these deeds. It can only be through these positive interactions. It can only be essentially through dhikr, right? We're in remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more we fill our heart with Allah, because it's a vessel, right? Essentially the heart is a vessel. And the more I fill it with the remembrance of Allah, what am I going to reflect?
Allah's qualities.
Right? I'm going to reflect those divine qualities, right? That because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, His remembrance is what protects me from myself. His remembrance is what protects me from harm. His remembrance is what empowers me to do good. That's why it's so important. And that's one of the beauties of fasting, right? It's something that is, I'm constantly in that state. It's a continuous state. And the amazing thing is like fasting is one of those few deeds where I can do multiple at the same time, right? So while I'm praying, right, I can't make Umrah. Right? While I'm praying, I can't give charity, right? Like I'm limited in those different states. But with fasting, guess what? I can do multiple things. And not just that, I'm expected to, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't say, okay, fast and just go sleep all day. Right? Go to sleep at Fajr and wake up at Maghrib. No, like that's not, I mean, I think Ustad Uthman will tell us if the fast is valid or not. But that's definitely not the purpose of the fast. But being in that state of dhikr and being in that state of remembrance is something that will protect us. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "As-sawmu junnah," right? Like it's a shield. It's something that protects us. It protects us from this harm. But one of the reasons I was hesitant in saying like, okay, you know, Allah opens up different doors for people, it's because I think, subhanAllah, I just read a beautiful statement from Ali, radiallahu anhu alayhi salam, where he goes that how do you tell the difference between a trial and tribulation? Right? How do you tell the difference between fitna and ibtila? And he says that the test is one that brings you nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fitna is the one that pushes you away. So, ibtila is good, right? Being tested is good. That means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is helping us through this adversity and drawing nearer to Him and getting closer to Him, Azza wa Jal. The angels send their prayers on the one fasting when he breaks his fast until he completes his meal, meaning that they're constantly in a state of dua. So subhanAllah, there's a reward for the entire fast, and even while I'm breaking fast, I'm still getting blessings and I'm still getting reward. That's why it makes this such an amazing ibadah. So Ibn Abdul Salam, he mentions a few things on what makes fasting unique. He says that it raises your rank, it removes your sins, it helps break your desires, it causes one to increase in charity, it causes one to increase in obedience. He says that it allows us to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it gives us a better understanding of the unseen. And the reason for that is, if I'm standing next to another person, is there a way for me to differentiate between who's fasting and who's not? Right? There's no way to know. It's not like we don't wear fasting labels on our head, right, when we're fasting. So understanding that difference exists, that it's something that is so secret, right? It's so personal. I think that's a really important aspect. Deflecting thoughts of sins and disobedience. Why? Because we're in a state of dhikr, right? And we don't want to spoil that state. So I think these are all really good, I think conceptually, and understanding what the benefits of fasting are. So he says that, okay, well, these are the things that we're not allowed to do when we're fasting, right? We're not allowed to eat, we're not allowed to drink, we're not allowed to be intimate. And what happens in the last 10 nights of Ramadan usually is that we also are not able to sleep, right? We're staying up because we're making ibadah, even though it's not directly prohibited, but it's something that we all tend to fall into because we want to stay up and we want to take advantage of those last 10 nights. So the question is that, okay, well, what is unique about fasting when we don't eat, drink, we're not intimate, or we are unable to sleep? Even if I take away one of these elements, right? Forget all of them together. If I remove one of these elements, how do I feel? Right? I definitely feel grumpy, right? I feel grumpy, I feel angry. Now, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forcing us to do now? He's like, I want you to operate in this space. Right? Normally I'm going to take away all those things that you have access to, things that are open to you, and I'm going to remove them from you. And you know that when these things are taken away, how you're going to react. You're going to be upset. You're going to be frustrated. And, one of the things that we always joke about is like, when are the most fights in the masjid? In Ramadan. Parking, food, prayer spaces, like it is crazy. Yeah, I want us all like really think about that. It's like things that I think outside of Ramadan you might have a little bit, but I really question, I really wonder, is fighting over a prayer space? Like really? You know what I mean? Like
it's everywhere with the ladies too.
Yeah. I was gonna. I didn't want to say, but I was gonna say it's more with the ladies. Yeah. I think the men they're only a little bit more civil because they see the security guards.
Well, Imam, what happens is people mark a place and then they disappear.
Yeah.
And then
They save spaces. Yeah.
Right, but you don't know because you see a bag, you think it's the next.
Listen, saving a space is for someone who has to use the bathroom or who had to step away from a moment, not someone who came at Salat al-Maghrib and wants to save their space at Salat al-Isha.
Right, and then you sit there and she's like,
Yeah.
see my bag is
Yeah.
here. Like,
So you know what I'm going to do this year? Because you guys gave me good advice. I'm going to tell the security after Salat al-Maghrib, you pick up all of the bags and all of the sajadat that are there. And if anybody asks, be like, go talk to security.
yeah.
Then it's going to be, I would say then it'll be another thing I'll add to the list here. So you take away personal items.
For the ladies, they save the spot for them.
Yeah.
For them, right?
Oh, for their whole family. Yeah. 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 So there has to be a way to minimize that, inshallah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And subhanAllah, it's so sad. I've heard of cases. I think Abdullah he shared like a very famous case with me where he's like, there were two women fighting over, you know what? The last egg.
Yes.
It's suhoor. at suhoor, the last egg, like fists, like ready to fight over this last egg. This is the space we're operating in. Well, tayyib, what is going to allow me to still deal with people in a normal way, in a healthy way? Taqwa. That's it. Yeah.
So you were saying something earlier. Is this the favorite of all the ibadah is fasting?
No. The favorite ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the salah. There's no doubt about that. But the siyam has a special and unique place, without doubt. Let me put it this way. All of the obligations are important, but easily the most important is the prayer. Easily. If you look at the warnings, if you look at, how the Prophet ﷺ, because not just that, and Ustad Uthman will probably talk about this, for me to be exempted from fasting, are there situations?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are there situations where I can be exempted from prayer?
No.
It's very, very difficult, right? You're talking about a very, very narrow scope. A person was in a coma for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very, very narrow scope for people to be exempted. But for fasting, a person might be like, okay, khalas, I'll pay fidya, or a person is ill, a person's elder. You know what I mean? Like, there are different situations, and Ustad will talk about them, inshallah. But at the end of the day, like, salah is the only one where you don't find, even for umrah. For zakat, if I don't have money, what happens? I don't pay it. For hajj, if I don't have money, I don't go. If I have the money and I can't physically go, I can pay someone else to do it. Right? So for all of those, you can find exemptions for, but for the salah, you won't find that exemption. Yani, is there a fadl? Is there a makana? Is there, like, you know what I mean? Like, udma for the siyam? Absolutely. I don't doubt that. But in terms of importance, the salah by far is the one that's most important.
Just one last question.
Yeah.
If this is the hardest ibadah for you, not Ramadan, but the other ones,
Yeah.
does that mean you should focus on it, or you're saying focus on the other ones if it's like the hardest?
Can you say that in a different way?
Not Ramadan,
Yeah.
but fasting.
Oh, fasting outside of Ramadan. If you find it challenging?
I find it the most out of all the ibadah.
The most challenging one?
Yeah, so should I force myself to like...
I mean, here, force yourself sometimes. So what I would suggest, force yourself for Yom Arafah and Ashura. If you're going to force yourself, I would say force yourself for these 2 days.
It's the other, like people do it Monday, Thursday, white.
No, it's good. May Allah, listen, may Allah increase them. May Allah increase them and bless them. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to worry about other people's ibadat. Right? I'm here to worry about my relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one of the ways I know I'm distracted is when I start looking at other people's ibadahs.
It's like a goal, if you want to do it. It's like, oh,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Then find what you're good at.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You could just focus on
Yeah, focus on that. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm not good at fasting, but I'm really good at qiraat al-Quran. I'm really good at helping people. I'm really good at participating in the soup kitchen. I'm really good at helping set up. I'm really good. You know what I mean? Like there are, subhanAllah, like barakah is like the sun. There's enough for everyone. You just choose what you want. Allah has literally given us a buffet. Like it's like choose the deeds you want. Whatever deed you want to do. And there are some things that we think are so small, but they're so, and Allah Azza wa Jal is huge. Like the prostitute who went down and brought water to a dog. Allah accepted that deed. Allah accepted that deed from her. And the opposite, the woman who imprisoned the cat and didn't allow it to go hunt and to feed itself, Allah punished her for that. Like we don't know what Allah is going to accept from us. Like we don't. Our goal is to always seek Allah's mercy, right? That's what we're here. We want even a drop of Allah's mercy. If it falls onto us, anywhere, we're successful. And this is why we try to offer as much as we can. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so many pathways. And it's amazing when we talked about all these good deeds, Allah is constantly talking about multiplying them, giving us more. But when it comes to bad deeds, it's only one. And that's if I carry it out. If I just think about it and I change my mind, what happens? Even that is a good deed. Right? So if I think about doing something bad and I change my mind, I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Oh, that's a good deed. Like the doors of khair are so many and there's so much. And we just have to learn how to utilize them. So that's the space Allah wants us to navigate, and I think this is really important for every one of us. That when we're fasting, reminding ourselves, like, okay, if I'm angry and I'm frustrated, I'm doing this, that's fine, right? That's expected. But if I know it's expected, how I respond and how I deal with it, it should be, I need to remind myself, like, remember the first hadith? I'm fasting. That's where I need to remind myself. Or why am I doing this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, He's like, I'm in no need of you leaving your food and drink. Like, I don't need that. Am I doing Allah any favors by like giving more people access to rizq? Allah's rizq is unlimited, abundant. By me not eating 1 or 2 meals, who am I benefiting? It should be for me, right? Like, this is to purify myself, this is to purify my heart, this is to better my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's why we do those things. So, I think it's important to always keep those things in mind. But also the other benefit of fasting is, like, Allah's teaching me, okay, hey, listen, look how easy it is to stay away from halal.
From haram.
Halal.
Oh, from the halal, yes.
Right? I'm fasting.
Right.
This apple before Maghrib, it's haram to me. And as soon as the adhan is made, it's halal. I can consume it, I can eat it. So if I can train myself to stay away from halal, it should be that much easier too to stay away from haram. Right? These are things that Allah has allowed for me and I can stay away from it. Okay, it should be that much easier to stay away from those things that He disallowed for me. So like I said, the only thing that can really temper our anger, the only thing that can temper our frustration is taqwa. That's it, right? Nothing more can really control that. Nothing more can really temper that. And if we're operating in that state, it should become that much better when the rest of the year comes around. Because essentially, Ramadan, and this is a reminder for all of us, Ramadan is a springboard, right? It's that opportunity to, like, kind of catapult myself. I know there are a lot of people who are like, oh, you should be outside of Ramadan, how you are in Ramadan. I mean, may Allah bless those people. Like, I can't do it. That's not me. Like, and I'm just trying to be honest with myself. If I enter Ramadan here, what happens is that, what happens as soon as Ramadan starts and Ramadan continues? I start shooting up, right? Yes or no? I'm an amazing Muslim in Ramadan, right? And the day of Eid, it's like, move, the stock market crashes. But I would hope for myself that, okay, yes, you shoot up and it's a regeneration, it's a springboard, it's all those things, that when Ramadan ends, I hope I'm here. You know what I mean? Right? I want to see improvement. And if I've done that, I know, inshallah, and I trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted from me. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to reach Ramadan, to allow us to benefit from it, and allow us to be better when it ends. Ameen. Last set of discussion questions, if you guys would like to sit and talk. No discussions? Oh. Okay, let me just ask. What do you think? How does fasting help us develop self-control and discipline in areas beyond food and drink? I'm sorry? Sabr. Okay, good. What is sabr? It's a good translation. Tolerance, okay. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about sabr, or when the Prophet talks about sabr, it's usually in reaction to something, right? So I would say sabr is a manifestation of our reactions to things. Why is sabr important there? Right, that's where the test is. The test is, like, when the calamity first strikes, that's where you get tested. Man, I remember, subhanAllah, miskeen Auda. When I did the first year I came, we used to have a coffee machine in the kitchen, in the small kitchen. Nobody used to use it. So I used to go in there, I used to grind my coffee before the adhan. I used to grind the coffee, I used to tamp it, and I used to put it in the machine so that right after salah, I can come and I just press the button. I came back and he was in there and he had thrown out the coffee. I was furious. I was so bad. I was so mad. And I was like, why are you even in here? Did you even pray? Like, I was so upset. Yeah. No, and subhanAllah. And then what I realized, like, I'm getting mad over coffee. right? That's so silly. That's so childish. But the problem was like I should have controlled myself in that moment, right? I failed in that moment. Like, I apologized to him. I was like, no, I'm really sorry, akhi. Like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I was just.
We just had it
Yeah.
this morning. Philip threw away the coffee, and I was pounding on it.
Yeah, because like your heart is there, right? It's like, oh man, I can't wait to have that coffee, and you come down, it's like, where is it? Oh, in the sink. Like, So I think this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Sabr in the sadmat al-ula," right? That sabr is when calamity first strikes, because that's when emotion is the highest. The second question is, what are some practical ways we can increase our taqwa while fasting? Volunteer at Al-Hijrah in the women's section. Or the kids section. What do you say?
Eat with the women in Ramadan.
Or eat with the women in Ramadan. La ilaha illallah. Man, subhanallah. It can, there are a lot of spaces that can be very frustrating, for sure. I might want to scale into those places instead of placing myself, because I might not be ready for what I'm facing or what I'm dealing. Or even then, if I'm mentally prepared to be in spaces that are challenging or difficult, or people who I find difficult, what are some good ways for me to make sure that I'm maintaining my taqwa?
Whenever we're psychologically prepared, we react less.
Sure.
You know, going in and knowing that it's going to be challenging, you're already out.
If I feel my meter like going up, or I have to remove myself, that's something that's really important. That's something. Make sure that I have the ability to kind of escape and to remove myself from the situation, recharge, and then, right, then I can bring myself back. Or if I don't feel I'm recharged, what can I do? Just leave. No, the thing is, we obligate ourselves to be in certain situations and spaces, in certain relationships. But the obligations we have in Islam are only 5. Right? Those are our obligations. Sometimes we feel bad. Sometimes we feel upset. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes we feel obligated toward individuals and toward people. But at the end of the day, the most important relationship I have is with my Lord. And if anything is harming that relationship with my Lord, then I need to re-examine that relationship. It doesn't mean I can't come back and revisit, right? So I might have had a bad experience, or I heard something wrong, or I heard something, inappropriate from someone. It's like, okay, you know what? Let me confront it. Let me give them the opportunity to fix it or to change. And if I don't see it, khalas, I remove myself. Or I might be in a situation, you know what? No, I don't want to even give the opportunity. Okay, that's your prerogative, right? I'm not, you can't force relationships. Relationships have to be organic. But if I want people to be forgiving with me, I should have some grace with others, and I should be forgiving with them. The last one. How can we ensure that the spiritual benefits of fasting extend beyond Ramadan into our daily lives? Yeah. Okay, try to increase in my sunnah fasts, absolutely. What else? Engage with the Quran. I mean, it's so simple, it's so beautiful. Even if I'm not an Arab speaker, or even if I am, okay, go engage with a translation that you find meaningful to you. Right? It's such an easy. The beauty of the Quran is that the messaging, it's a cross language, right? It doesn't matter. Will you get the same prose and the same beauty? No, it's not going to be expressed in the same way. But the meaning is universal, and that's something that's really important. So engaging with the Quran, excellent. What else? Working on my other deeds, right? If I was good during Ramadan, okay, let me make sure that this continues outside of Ramadan. Okay, Ramadan, obviously we fasted for 30 days straight. Should I expect myself to fast 30 days every month? No, right? I think that's a bit much. Ramadan is a unique situation. If I was making all of my sunan in Ramadan, what can I do outside? Try to do some of them, at least, So bring some of the changes that I had during Ramadan. If I only made Outside of Ramadan, I only pray one rak'ah for witr, and I go to sleep. In Ramadan, I was probably praying. If I prayed at the church, I know I prayed the whole Taraweeh. Outside of Ramadan, what can I do? It's like, okay, you know what? What I learned about myself that I enjoy the short rak'at. So what can I do? I can keep it light. This is something that I can continue, and something that I can, and maybe as time goes on, I can extend it, or I can keep it short. Or it's like, you know what? I used to pray 8. Let me do 4. Okay, no problem. Like, take some of that khair. You know what I mean? Try to bring some of that khair with you. Try to pull it with you outside of that month. Qas, any comments or questions? Taqwa. Taqwa is, linguistically, it's like actually a shield. Right? That's the way to define it. I would translate taqwa as it's linked with ihsan and my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best way I feel to gauge taqwa is by looking at my interpersonal relationships. Because it's a judgment of my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I'm good with Allah, then that should reflect in my relationship with other people. So if I find myself judgmental, I find myself harsh, I find myself difficult to work with and difficult to deal with, then I need to reimagine. Because if we look at the Prophet ﷺ, he did all of these obligations. How did that translate into his interpersonal dealings? Like the most amazing being to ever live, ﷺ. Kind, gentle, you know what I mean? Like smiling, welcoming. Like he had all of these beautiful, wonderful characteristics. And I believe a lot of that has to do with because of how he worshipped. So if I'm not doing like even a portion of that, then there's something wrong. Is that the iqamah or the adhan? Okay, khalas inshallah. We'll stop here. Jazakumullah khair. Wallahu a'lam.